Welcome to this week's edition of the Sick Podcast, Recruits Draftcast, as always featuring Grant McCagg from Recruits. This week, we're going to be covering the World Juniors, as well as our two prospects of the week and our Habs prospect of the week. Let's get right into it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Recruits Draftcast.
And with the first overall selection in the 2023 NHL Draft, the Chicago Blackhawks are very proud to select from the Regina Pats, the Western Hockey League, Connor Bedard.
The sickest NHL draft and scouting podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Hey, Rocco.
How you doing, Grant?
Excellent. Great to finally have you on here. I know we were going to do it in the new year after the World Junior started, but better, sooner than later. So glad that you could step in for Shane today and host this podcast. And let's talk hockey.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to get going, and Shane's done a great job. Hopefully, I'm feeling okay for him this week. So let's get right into it and start with the World Juniors. The rosters have mostly been announced and finalized at this point. What are your thoughts on the team so far?
The Canadian team?
Yeah, we can start with the Team Canada for sure.
Okay. Well, I think they named their final roster last night, so let's have a look at it here. A couple of, typically there's about 5 or 6 surprises, I always say, and I think actually the last 2 or 3 years, I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, but there haven't been a lot of surprises for me. I think
not as many, no.
Owen Allard obviously is the one name that sticks out on at the forward group because, he's undrafted, right? And, I got to think that he's the one surprise, I guess, in the forward group. But I did a prediction of what I thought would be the locks at forward, and I think there were 10 or 11 that I had, and every one of them's there. So no real surprises with those forwards. And on defense, the only one again would be the kid that's Jake Furlong. I don't know how much you've seen of Jake, but being a Haligonian there, at least part-time, you've probably seen him play. And that'd be the only guy that I was a little surprised about being on the blue line, perhaps. But certainly the other 6 guys I expected, and I also expect them to be the 6 that play regularly. But there's always surprise. And then on defense, in net, I expected Ratzlaff, and I'm not a goalie expert by any means. So whoever the other 2 were, I was fine with, because I don't really focus on them, and gives a little more Q representation there. So glad to see there's a few Q guys. You probably happy to see that 2 of them are from Halifax, and
don't mind that.
3. So yeah,
I don't mind that at all. Anytime you can get a good maritime lad in there, I'm happy to see it. Now, I just want to touch on, you mentioned Allard was the name that's commonly been seeming like a bit of a surprise. So what can you tell us about him, and maybe what brought him, and what's given him an opportunity to make this team and go represent his country when maybe not as many people thought he might make that squad?
Well, I can tell you about every other guy, but I can't tell you about him. So that's why he's a surprise. Okay. I've never scouted him. So I honestly can't tell you anything.
Well, should be interesting to see what he can bring to the table then.
Yeah. And now, there's one returning guy in the whole team, and I don't believe that's ever been the case for a Canadian team. And even he wasn't a regular. He was added later. So I can't recall there ever being a Canadian team where there wasn't a regular returning player. So,
and the counterpoint to that is it gives guys an opportunity to fill roles that might have otherwise been spoken for.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, this is a tough tournament, and the first time that you play in the tournament, typically you're not the best. Like it's often the guys that are returning that you know what, because it's a step up. Like we see how
certainly it's a different game from just CHL.
How fast it is. And I think at the start, a few guys might be a little like deer caught in the headlights type thing, but there's so much talent there that I'm sure they'll get over the jitters and the rookie experience of being at their first World Juniors, and they'll be fine. They'll be one of the favorites. Obviously, they always are.
Now, what type of team are you expecting them to be here? What can we expect to see in terms of their style and their strengths and maybe their weaknesses as well?
That's a good question, and I haven't really studied Al Letang's coaching style, and a lot will depend on what he typically does when he's coaching. I expect there's a lot of talent there, and that they'll try to utilize that. They'll be aggressive, I think, offensively, probably forecheck fairly hard. There's a lot of speed there, a lot of talent. So I would suspect that they'll be, they won't be necessarily be defensive oriented. The one question mark, I guess, there might be and it's often the case with the Canadian team, is in net. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. Right?
Well, a lot of times you have no idea, and then until you see the tournament and see what you have.
Yeah, and often it's a guy that steps up that you don't necessarily expect that that has a great tournament, and usually there's one Canadian goalie that steps up and plays well. So
and goalies are a fickle breed too. So guys stepping up, like it is possible for goalies to step up like that in a shorter tournament, play above their typical, maybe what you might expect of them, and then really take a team on the run. I remember the World Juniors that was hosted in Toronto, and that Slovak goalie took them on a run right to the semis, to the point the Canadian fans were giving him a standing ovation at the end of the semifinal game. So a hot goalie can do that for you at that tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And even last year, Gajan, and he's returning for Slovakia. And we're going to look at some other rosters here. If we can bring up the U.S. roster, because I think they're probably the team on paper, at least. And I think you'll probably agree that
for me, they're the paper favorite.
Yeah. And this is what I projected. They only have 5 or 6 cuts to make. And I think, at least 18 of these guys are going to be on the team. And there might be a couple of surprises. There usually are, but these would be the guys that I think are favored to make it, with the 2 guys at the bottom being what I did was the last 3 guys are, maybe the ones that could be switched up, being Nelson, Terrence, and Higgins. Higgins is not eligible till next year. So, but the fact that he was invited to the camp and he's not even eligible till next year tells you just how highly they regard him,
Certainly. And the American team has the advantage. This team knows each other very, very well. They've played together for a long time, the majority of these players.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously the one surprise that Higgins, who isn't eligible till next year, gets invited, and Yzerman, who is top 2 on a lot of draft lists, did not. So what does that tell you?
Well, that was what I was going to ask you. What are you reading into that from the American squad not taking such a highly touted prospect of their own?
Right. Well, I think you have to, as a scout, I think you're going to have to do some digging into that, right? All the NHL teams will be doing a lot of background homework on Yzerman. I've heard some things that he's not necessarily the greatest teammate, maybe you could say, at this point. And you want to, it's a short tournament like that. Chemistry, coming together as a group is very important. So you try to take guys, nobody that's going to rock the boat and be, maybe like their top 6 is pretty strong. If we can put that back up again for a second, guys, if you don't mind. Cutter Gauthier, Ryan Leonard, Oliver Moore, Nazar, Perreault, Smith, Snuggerud.
These are all high draft picks here.
He wasn't going to beat any of those guys out for a top 6 spot, I don't think, this year.
No, it'd be tough too as an underage player.
Right. Now, would he accept a bottom line role? Maybe not,
Does he fit a bottom line role?
He's used to being a star, right? All his life. I mean, typically these American kids, they were always the star of their teams. And you want guys that will accept a bottom line role to play bottom line roles. So I think
this can be tough for guys to switch that mindset when they are used to having those opportunities, especially in a shorter tournament where there's not a lot of time to adjust.
Well, I mean, it's why a guy like Seneke wasn't invited to the Hlinka team in it, even though he probably had more points than any other player that played, or at least top 3. He had 45 points last year, but they thought, well, he may not be in our top 6, and would he accept that? Would he accept a checking type of, grinding role? And that's not Seneke's game necessarily. So there's an example of a kid that, based on his stats and what his offensive upside is and where he'll probably go in this year's draft, should have been at that tournament, but because of that, he didn't get the invite.
Well, and with these stronger teams, they have so much depth internally. Yes. Canada and the United States, you can find guys who suit roles better.
Oh, absolutely, and it'll be interesting on the fence. Like I included Polkamp there because, Casey, Buem, Hudson, Minetchin, they're all undersized. So I think you have to try to get a little bit of Polkamp's not awfully tall, but he's like 205, right? And I think you need a bit of meat back there.
We need a little jam on the back end, especially dealing with some of the other countries who have forwards who are not just skilled, but also the size as well.
Yeah, that's right. So I think Polkamp's probably the guy that I think the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think the first 7 guys are a decent bet to play, and then you just is Polkamp the other guy, probably. But and then in nets, Fowler just wins all the time, and Augustine, he did great things for the U18s in the past. So I think they're pretty good in goal. I like their defense and I like their forward. So, on paper, that's going to be a tough team to beat, I think.
Now, I'd like to move on to the host Sweden. But before we do that, quickly, I'm going to give you a chance to plug your guy here. Talk to me about Lane Hudson. And is he going to be must-watch TV at this World Juniors?
I think so, yeah. This is going to be his time to shine.
His real coming out party.
Oh, yeah. And Buem might Buem's and Casey are the 2 leading defense scorers in NCAA, along with Hudson. So they've got 3 dynamic offensive defensemen. They're going to have to make decisions on which 2 are going to be on the top. The top.
Would Hudson maybe be your early pick for a possible candidate for top defenseman of the tournament?
Hudson?
Yeah.
I don't see why not. Yeah,
should be right.
I think he'll put up. I think he'll be top 10 scorer at the tournament, and he might even lead it. I expect him to get a bushel full of assists, and you've seen him. He just it's almost impossible to check the kid. So
and a rare thing for defensemen is the puck follows him around the ice.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it really does. Let's move on to the host team, the Swedes, and bring up their roster if we could.
All right.
Talk to me a little bit about them.
Yeah, well, obviously Östlund and Edstrom are my guys, right? They're, I think they'll be. I think this will be Östlund's coming out party as far as that goes too. Last year's. It's typically a 19-year-old's tournament, and he's still a little small, and it was his first event, and he didn't really get that top 6 role that I thought he should have. I think him and Edstrom will both have superb tournaments. And you also got Bysted. So down the middle, I think they're as strong as anybody at this tournament.
Well, now for Osland, even though he wasn't a dominant player of that tournament last year, just to make that roster, when you say
for sure,
a tournament full of 19-year-olds, and Sweden has a deep pool of talent available.
Yeah. But I still think, especially on their power plays and stuff, when he wasn't out there, I think that was a big mistake. Like, especially when they had 5-on-3 and they needed a goal in that medal game. And it's like, where is Osland?
I tend to agree with you there.
His vision is just so good, and his puck possession skills. And I think, this year they'd be insane not to have him out there on 5-on-3s and 5-on-4s when they're looking for a goal. And you'll see a difference this year.
I can't imagine that would be a consideration this year. He should be stapled to that top unit.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it runs deep there. They're top 9, out of that group. When you include like Stenberg, Lekaramaki, who's come on this year after last year kind of being a bit disappointing. Wahlberg and Pettersson, Senators draft pick, you would have heard. All of those guys, solid juniors, and I think that their top 9 is going to be very solid. But where I also think that they have an edge on most teams, if not all, is defense. It's nice to see Havlid in there. He was fantastic as a U18. There were scouts that had him in the first round, despite him being only 5'10" or 5'9 3/4.
Now, what type of player would he be?
Smart, and competitive. He just very, very competitive. He's 5'9 3/4, but he plays like he's 6'1 3/4. Very smart. He'll be for a lot of people that this will be, because he missed all of last year. There's a lot of people that don't know about him, but they'll know about him, I think.
It's not going to take long to find out.
No, and of course Palika, who we.
Yeah, he's a well-known name on that squad for sure.
Yeah. I mean, at the junior level, he's very good, and he'll get points.
At this tournament, he should be able to excel at this tournament.
Sure. And Willander, of course, was a top 12 pick, so you expect him to be, one of the better defensemen in the tournament, right? And I mean, Pettersson and Salmonson were terrific 16, 17-year-olds. So, I mean, their top 5 blue liners are all excellent, and they'll be, that might be what Sweden will be tough. They'll be really tough. The one thing, the goalies, maybe none of them are household names, right? They weren't high draft picks, and I don't really know them. But as we've seen before, and you mentioned about Slovakia, a goalie comes out of nowhere often and stands on his head. So, but with that defense core, I don't think you need Marty Brodeur and Nets to keep the puck out.
Just someone to keep things steady.
Them being the hosts and stuff, they should be a really tough this year, I think.
Now, is it fair to assume Canada, US, and Sweden are probably the 3 favorites? And how would you rank them going into the tournament?
Yeah. Well, I think US, Canada, Sweden, but close. Sweden and Canada especially close. What do you think?
It's tough to bet against a host country that has the talent to keep up with the Canadas and the United States. For me, that adds a big layer of motivation. And you can't discount that, because they do have the talent to keep up with Canada and the US, and they have the depth to go with it. Now, I'm not saying they're my pick to win, but they might get you some pretty good betting odds and be a strong pick in that sort of sense. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they...
For me, the Americans are the favorite to win here.
Yeah,
and they should be the favorite to win. They know each other very well. They have a ton of first round picks, ton of high end talent. But again, with Sweden being the host, you never want to count them out, because they may relish that role, being a little bit of the underdog at home, and that might give them even more juice to get going.
Yeah. Well, it seems like Sweden looks great in the preliminary round all the time, and then loses.
They always do.
So I mean,
they're usually pretty solid right up until the gold medal game, and then we see. But
yeah, or even the semis. They've lost a lot of semis too.
Yeah.
But they'll be tough. I mean, you know how much I like Osland and Edstrom, so I think that they could carry them to
I'm
a
a
gold
big
medal.
fan of both those players as well. As far as I'm concerned, Vegas stole them, Edstrom this year at 30 or 31, whatever their pick was. Yeah. Now, aside from the big three teams there, who might be your next candidate to maybe steal a medal and surprise a few people?
I like Slovakia. If we can bring them up. I mean, I'm a huge Dvorsky guy, right? And he had a great tournament last year. So how good's he going to be a year older?
And he's gotten a lot. Eh? He's gotten a lot better the last few weeks, couple months, since he got comfortable with the OHL and making that transition. The more comfortable he gets, you're really seeing what type of player he is.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, he's been scoring since he came over, but yeah, he's just getting better and better. But that's adjusting. There's always a bit of an adjustment to the North American game and the smaller rinks, but I mean, they can put up a first line of Dvorsky and Meshar, who is another guy that's just really his second year in the OHL. He's
taken it to another level completely.
Yeah, he has. But I mean, it's either Misiak or Hanzek likely on the other side. That's that might be the best line in the tournament. Like, they'll be great. So
they can hang with anyone, those three.
Yeah, for sure. And then you back it up with like their top 6 to 9 is pretty good. Then it drops off, obviously. For you don't expect that they don't have the depth that the top 3 guys do. So
if you have 3 strong lines, if you get into a tight game with a stronger team, you can lean on those 3 and give your fourth line a little bit more sheltered minutes, and you can get away with it over 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I like Pekarczyk, I like Petrovsky, I like Repchik, Day's decent centerman as well, Kuchenberg. So I mean, I've been impressed by all these guys at one point or another. Zelinka's a draft pick of in the NHL as well. So it's not like
it's not a no-name team.
That's right. It's not like they don't have talent outside of the top 3, but they'll lean on their big guys, play them a ton, like you say. Chernik's another kid, like Philly picked him, So I like their forward group, and I think they'll score some goals.
Yeah. Looking at their defense is where things get a little bit more thin.
Well, you see how many were forwards are drafted and then only one defenseman, right?
Yeah.
And,
sure.
I mean, Chromiak's okay. Kemek is playing decent in the WHL. So there's a couple of kids that, are playing North American hockey, and they'll have to beat the North American team somewhere along the line if they want to win. So
at least those guys are used to playing that style and playing against these guys on a regular basis. They're not going to be surprised by the talent level coming at them.
Yeah, exactly. And Sturback obviously is he's the one guy that they'll really heavily lean on in this tournament. And just as they did at U18s throughout last year, the year before, he's a really solid defenseman, and he's playing Michigan State. So they'll, don't be surprised if Sturback's playing 30 plus minutes some nights,
Another name stands out there, and I haven't had a chance to see him yet, but I see the 2007 birth year there. That's a young player at this tournament.
Yeah. And I really don't pay much attention to the 2007s and like the guys that are 16, because I'm trying to identify 200 draft eligible.
Well, certainly, I haven't had a chance to see him either.
No, and especially, a Slovak playing, a 16-year-old Slovak playing in Sweden. I don't know too much about him, but
No, for sure. They're not
but
getting Hockey Night in Canada Saturday night slots.
but you always have a look at these guys, right? At the World Juniors. That's like, I hate to keep saying coming out party, but for a lot of guys, that this is the tournament for that, right? So it'll be our first chance to see him on the big stage if he presumably makes the team. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that they may not have any cuts or very few. Certainly on defense, there's only 8, so I guess he'll probably be playing, right?
Yeah, and then like you said, it is the biggest stage. It's the biggest stage in junior hockey, so guys get up for it.
Yeah, and then they've got 2 very good goalies, and actually even Elias isn't bad, but Urban and Gayan are very good goalies. So Gayan was the talk of the tournament last year, and obviously he'll be the starter. But if he has any hiccup, Urban can come in and shut the door as well. So they're set in net. They have a good top 6 for sure up front, top 9. I like them as a dark horse. They have surprised in a few tournaments in recent years, and I wouldn't be surprised if they surprise again.
They always play tight. They play teams tight and tough, and they don't give up a lot, and they never seem to, the odd time, but they never really seem to get blown out. They can hang.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's move on to the Finns if we can bring their squad up and talk about them for a moment.
That's another team that I think it's fair to say that this isn't one of the more talented Finnish groups that we've seen at the tournament, but we've seen it before with them. They don't always have the best team on paper, but yet they like the 3 goalies, for instance. Like, I can't tell you much about them, but I'm sure at least one of them will be good. And then I like their defense. That's probably I think will be the strength of their team. I mean, Karki's gone into the OHL and just lit it up. He scores like a goal a game almost. I think he'll probably have a good tournament
since making that switch. He's really been something.
Yeah, for sure. And I like Väisänen. It's his draft year, so he probably won't star, but I think he's a solid defenseman. I guess is Kiva Harvey injured? I didn't hear, but
which Väisänen are you speaking of?
Vidi Väisänen.
Vidi Väisänen.
Yeah, he's I've got him in the first round of this year's draft, so obviously I like him. But Kulanumi was really good as an 18-year-old, good offensive defenseman. Jesse Pulkkinen, he's one of my sleepers for this year's draft. He's just tearing up Finnish junior. He's 6'6", has a great shot, and he's been rising. Like, he might go second, third round as a 19-year-old this year. So I hope he gets a good opportunity, and we get to see him, because you love to see how they do against the best in North America and Sweden, right?
It's a great barometer, because it can be tough sometimes to scout the European players, especially if they're playing in a lower junior league in Europe versus the CHL, and how does their quality of competition compare. But when you get them head to head against their peers, you really see who's able to step up and make themselves known. Yeah,
and I like that Konsta Helenius and Emil Hemming are gonna. I'm sure they'll make the team. But that gives you an idea that they're maybe not the deepest 18 and 19-year-old group in Finland when 2 draft eligible guys are going to be on the squad.
Yeah, but can you touch on Helenius there for a moment, because he's going to be a player of high interest that people who are maybe just starting to pay attention to this year's draft crop are going to want to pay attention to in this tournament.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've moved him up to top 5 in my rankings, ahead of Yzerman even. So that tells you. And I mean, I'm not, typically when I make a move like that, I get some backing from, some of the boys, with the black coats on there that sit in the stands and watch these guys for a living. So he's highly regarded, and he, I think might have just an excellent tournament, and there'll be a lot of hoopla around him if he does produce like I think he might, because he's playing in Liga and scoring and looking really good. So
now, what type of player are we looking at there? Is he more of a goal scorer or a better playmaker, or a good combination of both?
He can do both. He really sees the ice well, but he's also got a good shot, and he's got the speed to get breakaway chances, and but it's his vision, I think, that really stands out. Just an extremely smart and skilled player, but he also, he's not the biggest kid, and when you're not to be top 10 on recruits list, we're both on the same page with that. You got to compete, right?
No, certainly. If you don't have a motor and you're a little smaller, that's tough.
Yeah, and I had one NHL guy say at the last U20 that he played in, there was a tune-up tournament in Europe that a lot of crossover at North American guys saw. Said he plays like he's 250, So you like to see those comments, right? So I'm looking forward to seeing him at the tournament, and obviously they have some good 18, 19-year-olds that, Neiman's decent.
Haminaho.
Yeah. Kaskakamaki. So Kiskinen. So they're not without some talent. Like all of these kids, Kumpulainen is playing in Oshawa. They're, Haltinen, obviously, Kasper Haltinen. So these are guys that were picked, I think all of them probably in the top 90 of the NHL draft. So they're decent players. They're just not, top 20 guys that a lot of the favored teams have, right? So on paper, they're probably fourth slotted or fifth for this tournament. But we've seen it with those guys before that doesn't matter. They're like the Slovaks. They can play you tough.
Right on. Now we got one more squad. We got the Czechs, I believe.
Yeah. And
so let's go through them here and see what they're all about.
Yeah. I don't think the depth is great with the Czechs, but they have a nice top six. They're certainly, their top line will probably be Sapovala centering Chalet and Kulich.
Yep.
Or they may have Kulich as the number one center, but I don't think that they'll have Becker, Kulich, and Sapovalov all playing center, because all three should be in the top six.
Yeah, they're gonna need to keep their players who can really score together if they're going to be able to keep up.
Yeah, I think so. Perhaps they play all three at center and try to balance it out a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if their top two lines really get heavy minutes. And I think Becker's a kid that I've been watching Parasak quite a bit, who's eligible for the draft in Prince George, and he's been playing on a line with Becker all year, and I just keep noticing this Becker kid. I love his he's taken a next step, and I think he'll be drafted this year as a 19-year-old, as a 2004, because he's just he's one of the best players in the WHL as far as I'm concerned, and I think he might have a solid tournament.
Yeah, and that's great. And I find a lot of times fans of teams can get on teams if they draft older players. Oh, why are we taking an overage or this and that? But a lot of times, not everyone's on the same timeline, and you need that extra year to develop. Not everyone's developing at 17. And to take a guy who now looks like he could be a player, and you get a little bit more finished product. You know what you're getting into, and I wouldn't be surprised either if he hears his name called finally.
Yeah, and on defense, it's a little weak compared to some other like they don't have Sweden's defense, that's for sure. But I mean, I don't mind Hamara, Port, and Ulsher are all draft picks, so they're not, they're half decent. I've seen Sabalka and Ketch or Czech. I don't know how you pronounce it, but so they're serviceable junior defensemen. And Adam Juracek, that's going to be the question mark, because he got nailed a couple of weeks ago there, and we had it on the podcast, and it looked like he suffered a concussion, and I don't know that he'll be okay for the tournament or not, but he's.
And from a personal standpoint, he may want to play that safe. I mean, a concussion is not something you want to be going into your draft being known for.
Yeah, right. And I mean, he's draft eligible. He's 17, so do they lean on him? I mean, he might be their best defenseman. Like he's slated to go top 15, right? And none of those other guys were close to being top 60 picks. So
just a matter of how healthy he can be or how healthy he is leading into it.
Right. So we'll see. But they almost won gold last year, right? So you can't discount them. Chalet, I mean, I say there's good Chalet and invisible Chalet, just like Yoel Armia. There's invisible Armia and good Armia. If good Chalet shows up for the tournament, their top line could fill the net.
That all depends on if he feels like playing that day.
That's right. But I mean, Kulich, right? If Kulich has a kind of tournament that he had like the U18s, or even last year he scored a bunch of goals at the U20, and Chalet gets hot, Sapovalov is, a great two-way junior centerman. You never know. They might surprise. And then where I think the key is for them will be the goalie, like Hrabel. He can stand on his head. So
he's certainly capable of stealing a game.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you have one of the better goalies, if not the best one, potentially in the tournament, just like Guyan with Slovak, the two of them can steal a couple of games. And you know how it is. It's one game knockout.
The great equalizer, especially in a shorter tournament where you really can get hot and just guy plays out of his mind like you've never seen for a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden they're standing there with a medal on their neck.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the 6 teams that I think are the best bets to medal, and it'll be 3 of those teams likely that.
And the gap between the haves and the have-nots in this tournament is closing. The discrepancy I find, at least for me, and you can touch on this, between the U.S., the Swedens, and Canada versus the other countries in the tournament, it's getting a little bit tighter year over year. So it's not as much of a shock if one of these teams makes a strong run to the semis or even the final.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree completely.
Well, that's great. So at this point, I think let's maybe move into, we actually have 2 prospects. We have co-prospects of the week. If you want to move into that for right now.
I just quickly, I'd like to talk about a couple of kids in the World Junior Challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a goalie that Canada East that he was lights out yesterday. Labra, he's playing for Smiths Falls Bears. So, we'll give a little shout out to the Ottawa Valley there, right?
We love a good Valley boy, good Maritimer and a good Valley boy. That's how you win, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I don't think he's actually from Quebec, Le Cedre, but he's playing much like Devon Levi a couple of years ago, right? Montreal area boy that played for Carleton Place and had his had a coming out party at the same event World Junior Challenge, and then just went from there. I mean, the difference with this kid is that he's 19, but what I think, I mean, I don't think it leads to him being drafted necessarily, but scouts noticed him. He shut out Sweden yesterday. And I mean, Sweden probably has a half dozen guys that'll go top 90 or top 100, and Canada East might have one or none. So for them to shut out Sweden, it was a lot on the goalie, and Labra apparently was just fantastic. So what NHL scouts are wondering is why college teams he hasn't committed to any college teams. So you know as well as I that there's a lot of college recruiters that'll be at this tournament.
Oh, certainly. Big one for that.
You know, because they're looking at tier 2 Canadian junior guys, right? That's so they'll all have been there, and I would be very surprised if not sometime over the next month you see, you know, one of the decent college university in the States that brings him in as a scholarship kid. And that's one of the great things about this tournament is it gives opportunities to some kids that aren't on the radar going in. So God see that from him, and I hope he keeps it up in the tournament. And I mean, if he plays like he did last game, the rest of the tournament, scouts might even start going to Smiths Falls games just to keep an eye on him the rest of the year.
Now, it's the World Junior A Challenge. So what's the quality of competition here relative to either the CHL versus the World Juniors, or how would it stack up?
Well, I mean, it's a notch below. I don't know what you'd compare it to.
Because these are the top players of Junior A. So
yeah. So they're just, you know, but I mean, we've seen some great players that played in this tournament through the years. You know, you can, Turris played, Kel McCarr, obviously, you know, you can name a bunch that came out of the tournament. And we're going to talk about, he's actually co-player of the week, and Trevor Connelly on the U.S. team. He's been the buzz of the tournament. I mean, it's not a surprise. He was the one that we expected to. I mean, he's the guy I have in my top 10, and there's only one. But we've got some clips here.
Yeah, let's go through those, because he's been awesome to watch, really, for long at this tournament.
Yeah. Well, his hands and his lateral agility are just. He might have the best hands in the draft. Like he's right up there. But you know, he's almost like a forward version of Cale McCarr. You know,
that's high praise for sure.
Yeah. Well, like you see just in these highlights. What I did was I took went on Instat, and it's, you know, there's a category called Deeks. And I said, okay, 7 Deeks in this game. Okay, well, let's have a look at these. And every one of them was like, wow.
Yeah, he dances out there.
Look at that, eh?
Yeah, he's slick. He's slick for sure. Now, he's not as high on a lot of lists that I'm seeing, but it looks like he maybe should be.
Oh, well, NHL guys are, you know, I mean, he's top 10 talent all day. And then you can tell by, and I mean, these are all, you know, highlights where he didn't get a point. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, he overhandles like you see on this one, right? He overhandles a bit at times, but then what he ended up drawing a penalty anyway, right? But
I think that's coachable too. Like guys at this level overhandling the puck, sometimes they're just used to being so much better than everybody that they can.
I don't mind a guy overhandling if he goes end to end.
No, you don't mind when it works, that's for sure.
Yeah. But there you see like his playmaking ability.
No, really good vision, it seems.
Yeah. Like I think it's more you know, his playmaking's better than his shot at this point. But I mean, he creates breakaways, right? With his shiftiness and speed.
Certainly.
And then he gets the rebounds like that, you know.
He's constantly opening up opening up.
Yeah,
lane.
look at this one.
This was a heck of a play.
Yeah, like the Swedish guys didn't even know it was in the net. Check out his eye hand here.
Yeah, that's something else. He's not even
That
looking.
is like elite.
Not many guys can do that.
I've never seen play like quite like that ever in my life.
Oh,
Like
puck almost landed on the toe of his stick.
yeah, no, that I mean, if you don't notice that he has fantastic eye-hand coordination after that play, you know, you're not watching. that was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's he had 4 points in the second game of the World Junior Challenge. Point in the first one. But he had like 7 of those dekes against Slovak, where he probably should have had 3 or 4 points in that game as well. But he's been the dominant force of that tournament, and just confirming that he's certainly top 15 lock. And at this point, I've got him top 10.
Yeah, no, he looks like a heck of a talent for sure. There's no doubt about that. And if he keeps that up, it's going to be tough to keep him outside of the top 10 for a lot of teams.
Yeah, yeah. And our the other prospect of the week, we can touch on him if you can bring him up here, guys. That'd be great.
Demidov.
Yeah, Ivan Demidov. I guess I should have said it so they know who I'm.
That's okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I mean, I had him second ranked early in the year. Loved him in the preseason. Then he got injured. So
now where is he playing this year?
Out of sight, out of mind. Well, he started the year with the SKA in the K.
Yep.
Along with Michkov. And the two were fantastic in preseason, and then sitting on the bench or in the stands to start the year. But he's over his injury. He's back, and they put him in junior, which I think is where he should be. But you see by these highlights that he's terrific skilled kid. He's had points every game back, 2 or 3 points. Look at the vision. I love his skating. This is a good example here. Just a terrific skater and protects the puck well. Yeah, what's that?
His edge work is fantastic.
He's got fantastic edges, and he and vision, and he's quick. Like his skating is top of the draft for me. And I mean, he's only listed at 5'11" and whatever, but he's a thick kid. He's strong. Like I don't see him being. I wouldn't call him undersized at all. Look at the hands here.
Yeah, that's something.
The puck was on edge, right? And I mean that's similar to the goal by Connelly.
Now where do you have him ranked right now?
I think at 5 or 6.
And where would you have him if he wasn't Russian?
Well, if he hadn't been injured too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good question, but I mean, I love Lindstrom, and you love Lindstrom, and
so there's a handful of very, very talented players in this draft, but the Russian.
I think I have him close. I think I have him close to where he probably should be. I'm not penalizing him too much because, I mean, we saw it last draft. It doesn't seem to matter to the NHL teams. They ended up picking friggin' 3 guys in the top 12, right?
Yeah, I mean, they've seen it burn them so many times waiting on guys. I think maybe they're just taking the best guys.
Well, yeah. And I mean, you got to wait 2 to 3 years for guys that go to college usually anyways, or close, at least 2 years. So I guess the mindset is, well, what's an extra year wait, right? I mean,
you can't overdevelop them either.
The issue is that you don't have as much hands-on development as you should, as you'd like, and the uncertainty in Russia and stuff. But they seem to be still becoming over. So, I mean, there was question marks with it going into the draft last year, and I got surprised. Like Simishev, for instance, going top 10, still blows me away. So the NHL teams also don't.
There was an audible gasp in the crowd.
Yeah, yeah. Especially when it was him instead of Michkov at that point, right?
Yeah, certainly, because everyone
Yeah,
Michkov is by far at least the number one Russian.
yeah. And I mean, Demidov is, from all reports and from what I saw in preseason, playing it against men and stuff, character kid, hard worker. You're not going to have any issues with his defensive game and him listening and learning. So
And that's all.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, no, hard not to.
Yeah.
So one more guy to touch on this week, the Habs prospect of the week, Rhett Pitlick.
Yeah, I made it the month because he was kind of a tied last week, and we hadn't given him any props up until now. So this is more like it was an 8-game period between November 12th and December 12th, or 7 games. Sorry, he had 8 goals. Check out the speed on him.
Yeah. Now, what's his game all about? You see the speed there.
It's all about those wheels. It's. I mean, he utilizes it for forecheck, gets right on top of people. I mean, he's got a really good shot. He doesn't use it enough. He's a playmaker too, but it's all about that speed. It's like they have him now on the top line with Oliver Miller.
Yep.
Who might have been the fastest skater in last year's draft. So these two guys playing together, and they got Snuggerud on the other side. See that pass? That was beauty.
Now, where did Montreal select him?
5th round in 19. And then he played 2 more years in the USHL. So this is his junior year. And, Minnesota's got a lot. They were really good the last 2 years. Obviously, they had Cooley and all those guys last year. So he didn't see a top line role. But now this year he started 3rd line, then 2nd. Now he's on that top unit with Oliver and Snuggerud.
And just seems to be most of the opportunity there.
Yeah, for sure. But there's a nice tip. Like, he's got his offensive skill set is good. Good eye-hand coordination, good shot, makes plays, and that speed is like, I don't know that there's a better 1-2 punch of him with Oliver. The two of them are just so fast. So that's a fun line to watch. And I think the Canadians have to deeply consider, if you wait till after his senior year, he might decide to go somewhere else, right? So
what do you project him in terms of a pro?
Well, I mean, I think he'll be a really good AHLer, and if he can learn to be consistent, he's got the speed and the skill to play in the NHL. He's got NHL speed and skill. So it's all he's undersized, right? So
and his dad and brother both played in the league as well.
Yeah, that's right. But I think he's more skilled than Rem. He's a little faster, better shot. Well, no, maybe not a better shot, but he just more skill in general.
Yeah.
Little faster. So, I mean, he's going to be 23 at training camp next year.
Yep.
So you try to sign him if you like him enough. If they've got the contract at the end of this year, I think he's showing enough now. I think he's top 20 or top 15 in scoring in NCAA. I don't see why they don't offer him a contract at the end of the year, and he turns pro after his junior season this year. So, for a 5th round pick,
there's not much downside to giving a guy a look in a non-playoff season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 5th round pick, that's all you can hope for. That goes to the college route. That by the end of his junior season, that you want to sign him. And he's had 5 years to develop, so I think that they'll strongly consider signing him at the end of the year. Right
on. That's great.
Well, Rocco, you didn't really introduce yourself. I mean, I guess people don't know that you used to scout with ISS, right?
Yeah. So I guess we didn't cover that. We'll cover me last, I suppose. I did. I started scouting with ISS Hockey. I worked with them for 3 seasons, which I loved. I got the opportunity to cover the OHL, the Quebec League. I did the U17s in
Nice.
Sault Ste. Marie. I got to cover the World Juniors for them in Montreal. So I had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot, and that's how I kind of got my start. And then, I've been with you at Recruits now. This is my 3rd season, I guess. I started the second half 2 years ago, and this year been doing primarily the CHL and bits and pieces of the Europeans as well, but mostly focusing on the CHL for sure. Doing a lot of games in person, primarily on video, but catching games in 67s and the Olympics and Gatineau anytime we can. And yeah, it's been a great year so far, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, you've got a good scouting eye, and finally talked you into getting on Twitter. I saw there today, so
I joined Twitter today. I finally caved in.
Yeah.
So if you want to follow me, I'm at Scout Rocco, and I will post my first tweet at some point here, and I'll try and put bits and pieces as I watch guys throughout the rest of the year here, and keep everyone updated on what's going on in the CHL specifically.
Great. Well, I'll give you I'll pimp you there a bit on Twitter, and certainly tag you when this comes up, and hopefully a few people will follow you, and your great takes once a week when you put out a tweet or whatever it'll be. But I'm glad that you came over to the dark side, and we'll see you on Twitter.
That's it. Right on. And thanks again for having me today. I was happy to fill in, and looking forward to doing this again.
Thanks, Rocco.
Right on. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, Recruits Draftcast on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.